Välkommen till programmet Tro och under som vi sänder från Medimission International. Det är så roligt att du är med oss den här söndagskvällen igen. Vi lever i märkliga tider och det har ju inte undgått någon, utan det är mycket som har förändrats av våra omständigheter. Men mitt i allt detta så ser vi i vårt arbete att Gud, han håller på att göra så mycket. Vårt arbete växer och mitt under pandemin så har vi ändå fått se hur människor har tagit emot evangeliet om Jesus, och mycket av det vi har stått i så många år, det bara fortsätter och det ökar faktiskt. Varje program så brukar vi ändå säga också ett stort tack till dig som står med oss i våra förböner. Under de månaderna som ligger bakom så har vi fått mejl och telefoner när ni uppskattar vårt arbete och att framförallt att ni ber för oss. Vi är så beroende av att det finns människor som har ett hjärta för mission, ett hjärta för Gud, och som står med oss i vårt arbete. Tillsammans, som är ett nyckelord, så får vi se hur det som är bara växer till hela tiden. Varje program så har vi ett speciellt tema. Vi fokuserar på ett speciellt område, ett land eller något projekt som vi just nu håller på med. Och ikväll så ska vi tala om någonting som är på nyheterna i Sverige, i Finland, i hela Skandinavien, ja, stora delar av världen. Och det är Ukraina. Ukraina är ett land som är i förändring, ett Ukraina som lever med en konflikt. Och det är så mycket som händer både ekonomiskt, politiskt, men också tror vi att det finns saker som håller på att hända på det andliga området. So tonight it's a great honor for me to have Hanna Hauka with us from the studio in Finland, and also Andrei Motinga. You're heartily welcome to this special program about East Ukraine and also Russia, of course.
Thank you.
Hello, Morgan. Hello, Sweden.
Hello. I just said to the Swedish viewer that Ukraine and the conflicts there is in the secular media all the time here in Sweden, and we are curious about what you have for information, because you recently came back from Ukraine and you have, informative information, what you have seen with your own eyes. You have met people, you have been there. And first of all, Hanno, can you describe the conditions? I mean, we are living in the pandemic and everything has been changed. I mean, we are all a part of it. But what can you say generally what's happening and the conditions, your feelings about Ukraine right now?
Well, first of all, we came back from the war zone, which is in East Ukraine. And it's a war zone that has over 400 kilometers of conflict line. In other words, we have, many, many villages along the conflict line inside Ukrainian borders, starting from Mariupol, which is on the Sea of Azov, the Azov Sea, extends through, through the area of Donetsk all the way up to Lugansk and so on. So we're talking about an active war zone actually in Europe. That's the first thing I want to say, because our press, Swedish press, Finnish press, international press, has forgotten about this war. But it's a war when people die every single day. And so when we came into East Ukraine on Sunday and then Monday of this week, so we've been out of that area for a little over 24 hours now, maybe 36 hours. Then when we went in, we were quite surprised. We visited 7 smaller villages, and we visited 2 bigger cities, actually very big cities. But in those villages, of the 7 villages, in 6 villages, that we heard military action. I mean, artillery shelling from the occupied territories, from Russian forces and separatist forces, as they were shelling these same villages that we had visited, or in and around the villages. And one of the villages that we visited had received 35 direct hits. The houses in the villages had received direct hits from 35 artillery shells that were fired at them that same morning when we came. So, that's just to give you a background. We're talking about a war. And so when we talk about, a mega city campaign, which you probably want to ask questions about later on, we're talking about an evangelistic campaign in a war zone.
What you're describing right now is, as you said, in the secular media, the silence is so, I mean, you never heard, not so much what's really happening in Ukraine right now. So I mean, what about the churches, the pastors, how they are doing? I mean, this is a very, very special time for them also.
Andre, you want to answer that question? What do the pastors say now?
Actually, they are living on this situation for 8 years already. And the worst thing of this conflict, because it freezed in same area, and people living in area connected to this war side, the front line, they are living permanently under the bombing and shelling. So, and the question is about 3 million people who left on that areas in the area of direct bombing, potential bombing from the occupied side. So for the pastors, it's how they say it's a normal situation, but the bad thing they tell this situation normal, but for 8 years living in this situation. But anyway, comparing for the last 2 or 3 years, the military situation is escalating now day by day or hour by hour. So we have seen a lot of war techniques,
military
hardware moving there in daytime. So it never happened. So in daytime, the military hardware moving there. And also the border sides between Ukraine and occupied territory are closed from the Donetsk side. So usually the population can move from side to side anyway. But right now, only one point is working from 11 a.m. until 3 p.m. So only several people less than 100 people are moving a day.
Checkpoints, at the checkpoints.
Yeah, on the checkpoints between Ukraine and this Donetsk Republic occupied by Russia. And that's very bad signals that situation can change dramatically in any hour. And one of the last comment I've got to the team working there, that in these villages they can have during the mission, they can have package of the mission book, what can be delivered during the mission, and one package can be saved if the border change, so it can be delivered already on the occupied territory.
Andre means that if the borders, if the internal artificial border, which now has become a reality, if that changes to the point where the Russians and the rebels take more territory.
Yeah, right.
That's what you mean.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So our mission happens also in the villages what are staying right on this front line. Literally, so they named this point 0 point, what means 0 meters to the occupied territory. So when you move on the area, so the area has different these markers like green, yellow, and red one. And also when you are moving in the red area where the usual Ukrainian citizens cannot pass, but we have access there because having good relationship with the local churches and capellans working there. So in this red area, when you are moving, they always say, now we have 3 kilometers to the front line, 2 kilometers, 1 kilometer, 500 meters, or 0 line. And many of our villages and small cities are staying on this 0 point. So right on the border, this unofficial border. And now in this escalation, in any time, the border can move to that side. On that case, we have this like emergency pocket. If they move to other side, they have books, mission books, what can be delivered already on the Donetsk Republic.
Yeah, and the reason why Andre says that is because right now, in this present situation, the power to change books that we use in every single megacity campaign, they can be delivered only to the Ukrainian, to the free side. They cannot be delivered to the occupied territories right now. But what Andre is saying is that if there's a new invasion, new military activity, which looks like it may happen, and then the borders will again be changed, and the Russians will take more territory with their local rebels. And in that case, the books will be already inside the territory. We don't need to worry about how to get them inside. Of course, that's a heavy price to pay to have books inside that territory.
I mean, yeah, when I hear you talking about this, I understand this is a very, very special, hard, I mean, very hard situation for the Ukrainian people, the churches, of course, and so. And we know that the gospel is always make a change in people's lives. But Hanno, I might ask you, why do you think it's so silent about this? Because in Sweden here, we don't hear so much what's really happening. Why?
I can tell you that where we have just been with Andre, there were no reporters. There was not one single reporter. If you want to know the reason why, I can tell you why. When 35 artillery shells are fired and they have direct hits in a village, there will be no reporter standing by to report. It's a dangerous situation. It's a life-threatening situation. You can be killed. And so that's why the reporters are not there. Why the OSCE, which is the European, the Operation for Security and Cooperation in Europe, that's the people that are keeping an eye and reporting on the situation between the Russians and the Ukrainians, the military activity. And even they don't go everywhere. Even they are afraid for their own security to be moving around after 3 p.m. in the afternoon. They go back to their hotel in Mariupol and some other cities at 3 p.m. And then the Russians open fire. Then they start the shelling. And so as far as the European security people are concerned, everything was okay that day because they were out there until 3 p.m. Nothing happened. But the Russians know when they go back to the barracks or when they go back to the hotel, they know when that happens, and it's free game. It's a free game after that. So
when we saw the OSCE cars moving there, yeah. So the locals told, we call them blind cats. Because they wake up in the hotels, 9 o'clock, they start moving at the war area.
War zone, yeah.
War zone. And then 3 p.m., they have to be already in the hotel. And you can be a little bit more safe on this time, yeah. Because the OSCE is moving there.
However, let me say this, Andre. In war, the rules change all the time. In other words, there are really no rules. In other words, even now, when we visited 7 different villages, in the middle of the day when the OSCE, the European security people, were moving, checking, even then in the middle of the day, there was heavy shelling in 6 of the villages that were around us. In other words, bombs were falling that same day. And the way the reporting goes, and this is interesting because the Swedes need to know this, if the European Union security people, if they report, for example, they reported for the 2 days that we were there, or the one day especially, they said there were 19 attacks.
19 cases.
19 cases from the Russian occupied territories. They did not say that in one case, which was our case that we saw, there were 35 artillery shells that had direct hits in private homes and blew them up. And so you calculate your math. 19 locations times, even let's say it's 35 shells for each location, you're talking about 600 artillery shells exploding in one day, hitting private homes and stuff.
It's a forgotten war. It's a forgotten war.
Yeah. And the village what we visited were bombed by mines, 120 millimeters.
Not mines. The mines are different in English. It's called artillery shells.
Artillery shells.
Artillery.
So 180 millimeters. So one of them is 16 kilos of the exploding materials. So if it hits a house, so it destroys it at all. And 35 were got to this small village. And I saw it by my eyes, so I am witnessing. So no one were were bombed outside of the buildings, not on the street, on the yard, on the field. So all of them were targeting the houses, the living houses of civilian living houses.
Yeah. In answer to your previous question, Morgan, when you asked Andrei, how do the pastors feel? I remember we were just outside the city of Donetsk on the Ukrainian side at a checkpoint. The Ukrainian security would not let us go through because it was, I guess, too dangerous. I was talking to one of the pastors of one of the biggest churches in East Ukraine. His name is Pastor Andrei.
Andrei Yaprach.
Yeah, Yaprach, yeah. So anyway, I was standing beside him at the checkpoint, and he was looking across, across the area into the restricted zone where we cannot go. And he said, "This is unbelievable. This is my country. We used to have free access. We used to travel freely. And now we have a border deep inside our own territory. We have a border that we cannot cross because there's a military on the other side that won't let us." He said, "The day has come when Ukrainians and Russians, both Slavic nations, we hate each other." He said, "This is unbelievable. We never thought this day would ever come." But it's the reality. And then Andrei also mentioned the movement of heavy military equipment in the middle of the day. I just want to also, for the sake of the Swedish audience, I just want to say what that means. Heavy military equipment like tanks, armored vehicles, and so on, they are moved from place to place during the night when it's in total darkness. That's the normal thing. Now we saw them with our own eyes moving heavy equipment in the middle of the day, which also sends a signal, to people who understand. If they are moving equipment in the middle of the day, and if they are in a hurry where you have dozens of transport vehicles hauling equipment in front of your eyes for everybody to see, it means there's a reason for that movement. And because they're in a hurry, there's a reason to be in a hurry. So I say that, we were receiving signals that you can only really interpret in one way. They are preparing for some more military action, big time.
The whole Sweden, I think we want to pray for this, because we have done more than 100 such mega city campaigns, but this is a special one. We understand that because this is a forgotten war. So, but what will you say to the Swedish mission family we have here, and also other people in Sweden? What would you say about how can we support? Because this is very important.
Yeah, let me also give the microphone maybe to Andrei. What would you say to the Swedish people? How can they support?
First of all, they can pray, because the people what we met on the bombed village, the main idea they told what they were doing during the bombing, because the bombing lasted about 1 hour. So hide it under the beds. They were praying to God. Definitely, any of them were praying. So they feel the presence of God during these crisis moments, the hard moments of life, and they really need the prayer support. Also, you can help them by the information support. So to keep your attention, keep your focus. You can start Google the news about Ukraine and find out. So there are some reports, and also following our report. And also you can support this mission by your donations, because all this big campaign it costs. So the TV, the TV advertisements, radio programs, TV programs, billboards, the books themselves, and you have also to deliver them from place to place. That costs, and the call center what is already working there in Mariupol, and the volunteers are depart from the Ukrainian churches, and they do it voluntary. But all this big campaign cannot be imagined without this big media support from any type of media. What's going on, and that's so it's a challengeable area, because usually we are organizing this mission in big cities, and everything is going surrounding these big cities, so it has one center. But here we have 3 different campaigns in one, in Mariupol, in Slavyansk, and the war zone. For example, Mariupol and Slavyansk are big cities with a normal media, so with TV channels, radio stations, the billboards and internet. But in the war zone, it depends on the territory. It can not have any radio or TV station, or can have Ukrainian stations or Donetsk Republic stations. For example, they were bombing the TV transmitters, not to have access to the media. But anyway, we find solutions where we don't have radio or TV, so we are delivering books, and the local volunteers are working. We are using the billboards, what nobody were used for some years, of these 4 years. And so that is a challenge, but we find the solutions how to organize mission in this.
I also thinking about, I mean, the young people. You mentioned, Hanno, that this war have been for 8 years, and those who are between 15 and 20, they're growing slowly to be adults. Half of their life they have been middle of the war zone, and I'm thinking about the future, the nation in Ukraine. It's important to have this mission we're doing right now, because the young one also.
Yeah, let me. I want to get back to that just in a minute, because I have something important to say. But let me just go back for a minute to the village that we visited that had received 35 explosions, or 35 artillery shells had hit the homes, as Andrei was saying. When we first arrived in that village, what we saw was something I will never forget. Blown up houses, bricks and junk, just debris everywhere. Then I saw people standing on piles of cement or bricks, what was left of the home, and they were weeping. They were mourning. The women would cry, the men would be silent, and they would just look down, and they would not react to anything. Like, it was shock. It had just happened that same day. And so you know, you see the effect of war. Andrei said that in one of the homes, or actually 2 of the homes, they actually hid, when the shelling started, they hid under mattresses in the middle of the house, you know, where you have multiple walls separating them from the outside. And so, and then that was their only shelter, to be hiding under mattresses as the shells exploded and as the house was being torn apart by shelling. So it was a dramatic thing. And they were praying. I mean, these people on film, you know, in front of the camera, they were saying, we prayed to God, we were trying to pray the prayers that we had learned. We tried to remember what the Bible says in the midst of all the chaos and the shelling and the explosions. And so these people have they have a kind of a religious something there in the background. Of course, they don't know obviously what we know, but about the Bible and so on, about God, but there's something there. Now, the big deal, why the campaign is important. Ukrainian military intelligence and the military, they had a meeting with pastors in that area, the pastors that we will be, you know, working with. And they told these pastors, the war will, someday this war will end. But when the war ends, we have a problem. The minds of people have been poisoned. The poison is called hatred, revenge, fear, hopelessness, hostility, not being able to forgive or forget. I mean, how can we be one nation together as, you know, as relatives or as brothers and sisters if our minds have been poisoned with all kinds of negative and aggression, negative thoughts, aggressiveness, and unforgiveness? So they said, we have no tools. We have nothing that we can do that will heal the minds of people and when their minds and their hearts have been poisoned. Then they said to the churches, you are the only people that know how to deal with this problem when minds and hearts are poisoned. And he says, please do it. We support you.
Hanno and Andrei, I mean, this is so important, and I think we will continue to another program follow up this, continue to talk about this, because this is a forgotten war, and what we are doing in our mission work can be a change for the nation also, and especially for the younger ones. What you are describing is, I mean, it's touching my heart so deep. So I think we will come back because the time is running out, dear friends, in this program. But we will continue to follow up this in another program and just continue to talk about Ukraine and the forgotten war. It has to be mentioned and maybe alarmed also in the rest of the world. So Hanno and Andrei, thank you for watching and to being with us this night from Finland, the headquarters. Always so informative information because you have been there in Ukraine. So we will come back.
And Morgan, we're going back in about 2 weeks' time, just to finalize all the preparations that are needed for December 1st. Please pray for us. And then we will go back again in the middle of December to make sure that everything is going according to plan.
You need a lot of prayer.
We need a lot of prayer, and we thank you. And we thank you for that.
Yeah. Vi vill bara påminna dig om att vår tidning Mediemission finns och att i den så finns all information du behöver läsa om Ukraina, om Ryssland, om den här situationen. Som ni hörde så har de precis varit där. Och du kan beställa den på vår hemsida som är mediemission.se. Där finns all information som du behöver. Och vi vill från vårt arbete önska dig det bästa vi kan ge dig, och det är Guds rika välsignelse. Tack!